Good afternoon. I am Dr. Sonia Cunningham Leverett, owner and operator of Hadassah's Crown Publishing, and I am pleased to be here for our author series of interviews. We rescheduled our Thursday night interview until today, Friday afternoon, because we have a family celebration going on, and so I am here with my dad, and we are going to talk with you for a little while about his book. So here in my sister's room, we've just taken over. We have set up our studio here, and you hear our wonderful theme song in the back. So we will pause that right now so that we can tell you a little bit about our book and a little bit about our guest who will be here today. So my father is none other than Ulysses Cunningham. He is currently serving on the Board of Commission for the Commission of Public Works in Lawrence, South Carolina. He is the chairman of the Deacon Board for Good Hope Baptist Church. He is a used car salesman, and he's been in business for over 50 years. He is a veteran. He is a Lander University alum. He attended South Carolina State University. He's going to talk about all of those things, but very quickly I will share with you just a little bit about his book. So the introduction or the description of the book says, rising from poverty to middle class isn't easy, but faith in God, the love and support of family, perseverance, determination, courage, and compassion create the ingredients to make it happen. Learn how one man accomplished it all while remaining true to God, his family, his community, and himself. And so I have a series of questions that I am going to ask him, but please feel free to type in the chat any questions that you might have. And also, you may have heard we're giving away a free copy of the book. And so if you would like to get your copy, if you don't have one, or if you want to gift one to a friend, you are more than welcome to say I'd like a free copy in the chat. So without further ado, I am going to turn the camera around and give him the opportunity to introduce himself, to tell you what inspired the book, what he wants people to take from the book, and just some wisdom from his life. He is an octogenarian, and so we are just so very blessed to be able to spend this awesome quality time with our dad. So here he is, Mr. Ulysses Cunningham. All right, Daddy, it's on. So tell us about yourself, whatever you'd like for us to know, and also let us know what is it that inspired you to write the book.
Growing up in a little small town of Waterloo, we had very little. We lived in poverty. We were sharecroppers. And I always had a dream that when I would grow up, that I was going to try to have a good home, a good place for my family to be raised with. And I just wasn't going to stay in poverty. You know, if you fall in a ditch and you don't try to get out, you'll stay in that ditch. But I was determined to get out of that ditch. My motto of this book is, nothing good happens without a struggle. Life is just not that easy. Things just don't fall out the air to you. You got to get out and work for it. You got to try, and you got to have enough knowledge and ambition to do these kind of things. You kind of take a job and not at the top of the list, but when you take that job, look toward the top of the list. Say, I'm going to climb this ladder. I'm not going to stay on the bottom. When I first took my first big job, I was starting off as a janitor, but I was determined that I would move up, and I moved to quality control supervisor, from there to production control, and I retired from General Electric as a quality control technician, X-ray technician. But let me back up a little bit. When we were sharecropping, we were planting cotton and corn, and I was out in the field and not big enough to really follow a mule, but I was big enough to take a little fertilizer and pour it in a distributor, take the cotton seeds there. And my motto was then, when I grow up, I'm gonna get me a job on the highway department, at the highway department. They were making $20 a week, and I'm gonna take $10 of that money and buy me a house with it. The other 5 was gonna go for groceries and a car. I was gonna spend the whole thing. I wasn't gonna save any of that at that time. But later on in my life, I was told, Ulysses, this was by my mother, when you make $1, don't spend the whole dollar, but spend some of it and save some of it. If you can't save but a dime, do that. But I grew up with my peers and everything, and most of them never accomplished much because they didn't feel like, life was fair to them. But they didn't want to get out and really struggle, like I did. I used to go to work on one job and make 8, sometimes 10 hours. I would come home and get my paintbrushes and go out and work another 7 or 8 hours. Sometimes I'd work 15 or 16 hours a day to try to better myself, try to be able to bring my family up in a decent home and have decent clothes. And I always told all 3 of my girls, I had 3 girls, wonderful girls, that if you want to go to college, I'm going to do everything in my power to send you to college. But if you don't want to go, please don't waste my money. But when I went to grammar school, and I always thought I was pretty smart. I was pretty good at math, and I was pretty good at reading at the time. And I had a professor that really inspired me. He would say so many different poems and things, and they would stick with me. And one time he said that we're going to have a speaking contest. If anybody want to volunteer to do it, the winner going to get a $10 bill. The next one is going to get a $5 bill. So we had this one guy that could speak real well, and he had the poem House by the Side of the Road. He won the $10. And I was given this poem, The Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And I won $5. And I was so grateful for that. When I got a little bit older, I was only 14 years old, I got my driver's license and started driving a school bus. We were making like $25 a month, and that was a big check, and they would pay you in cash for that. The first year I drove it was $25 a month. The second year, they raised us to $35 a month. And I've always followed that description. I've always felt like I was gonna, one day own my own home, own my own business. But I did work for 2 different companies. I worked for 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, and I worked for GE. I was always a little bit afraid to take the risk to go out in the business by myself. I always wanted to do it part-time because business is kind of like a roller coaster. You're up and down. I went into the car business, and one reason I chose the car business because I used to work for a car dealer, and he would buy cars for $100, maybe $200, and he would double his money. And I felt like that was a very lucrative business. And it has been successful to me. I think it helped me to get my girls through school. It helped me to own my own home. I'm debt free. I do have some savings. And I still enjoy working. But one thing, I've never been a person that would just sit back and rock and everything. I was always out doing something. And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and say a little bit of the poem that I learned and that I was rewarded $5 for it.
Okay, well, hold up. But before you go there, I just have to say, show them what's on your left arm. That's his prized possession. That's his Fitbit. And for him to say that he doesn't enjoy sitting at home, that is definitely the case. And so we have a challenge every week. And sadly, he's beating this week. And he goes to the Y every single day early in the morning. So hopefully soon I will follow his lead and do the same thing. I try to get my steps throughout the day, but I have to give it to him. He loves fitness and he's very, very active. So just had to get that plug in, but go ahead with your points, sir.
Okay, maybe I should back up a little bit and just talk a little bit about when I went to South Carolina State College. I thought I was getting a big scholarship, but when I got there, I had to work 3 days, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for just what I ate. Board was $32 a month at the time. And you still had to have your room rent, your books, college tuition, and I was working for, $1 a day, and I was putting in 5 and 6 hours a day. So after I dropped out of school, after 2.5 years, I started to work at this place called 3M. But this was the plywood plant, I worked at the plywood plant first. And I worked there for a while, and I drove a milk truck for a while. And then I was drafted in the Army. And that was a good experience for me. When I went to basic training, I was down at Fort Gord. I left there and went to Fort Dix, and I was shipped to Germany. Germany was a good experience for me. I got to travel quite a bit. Berlin, Barcelona, Spain. I went through Zurich, Switzerland, and Geneva, Switzerland. I went to Salzburg, Austria several times. Went to Paris, France. I had a meal up in the Eiffel Tower. That was a good experience. But when I was released from the Army, when I got discharged, I put in a few applications around Lawrence, and I got called to 3M. It was American Law at the time, but it was a subsidiary of 3M. And the personnel manager asked me if I would take a janitor's job, and I told him no. He said, why? I said, well, I don't want to be cleaning up after nobody, cleaning the restrooms and things like that. I want a better job. I got 2 years of college, I got military experience, and I'm willing to work, but I feel like I'm capable of working in production. So I turned it down for half an hour, and he called me back up to the personnel office and asked me to consider it again. Would you consider taking this job? We're going to have to hire some blacks in production, and you look like a good candidate. Would you consider taking the janitor's job for no more than 90 days? I said, okay, I will. So I took the job, and they kept their promise. In 60 days, I was in production. And I was working for a Caucasian guy. And we talked, and we thought everything was so lovely and everything. So when he went in the lunchroom, I went in the lunchroom also. And the Caucasian people, they stood up, threw that potato chips on the table and marched out. When we got back to the job, he asked me, he said, why did you do that? I said, well, look, John Kennedy just got killed trying to fight for our rights and everything. And I'm going to make sure that I eat in this lunchroom. I'm going to drink from those water fountains. And then we had 4 or 5 other blacks that was working there at the time. I encouraged them to eat in the lunchroom. I had to get on their case quite a bit. So this one guy went to the plant manager and asked him if it was okay. He said, sure, I thought you knew that you was welcome to eat in the lunchroom and everything. So that was the beginning of the integrating the cafeteria. Previously, no black person would eat in the cafeteria.
I have to pause for just a minute to say, and that's exactly what we call good trouble. And so I've had a few incidents like that in my work, when I worked and during my career, where sometimes, you just have to speak up. You just can't accept whatever is given or thrown to you, or allow people to treat you as second-class citizens. And so we've coined that phrase from the late John Lewis, who was just funeralized last week. And he said that good trouble, necessary trouble. And that's what we're talking about. So good trouble there at GE or Ceramtech, Alsamag, 3M, all of the different places that it was called. But we'll back up to South Carolina State just for a little while and ask you to talk about the sit-ins there and your participation there, because as a student at State back in the 1960s, when you look at what's happening today for those students who are there at State now, we're seeing a lot of repetition, some of the same things kind of going on. But talk to us just for a few minutes about your experiences there.
Yeah, I was in this sit-in demonstration about the same time John Lewis was in. We was in different states and everything. And I was working 3 times a day in the lunchroom. I didn't get to participate as much as I wanted to, but I did march with the group. We had groups that would come out and inspire us to march, and we were going to go to this
the drugstore. Was it Wentworth or
Yeah.
Whitworth?
Whitworth, I think it was.
Okay.
Anyhow, but you could go in and buy you a cone of ice cream or a cup of ice cream, but you had to march out. You could not eat it there. So we were going to go in and protest that and sit at the table and everything. So we had these marches, and it was a very rich man on a big car lot there in Orangeburg. He came by, bumping us all on the shoulders and everything. And later on, a bunch of the guys got put in jail for this. And I was too busy, I guess, waiting on the 40 people that I had to wait on 3 times a day. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on that, and then I was going to jump back and maybe talk about this poem that I read. And I always wanted to try to interpret that poem a little bit, and I'm just going to say a little bit of it because of the time. But it was The Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And he said, "Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, things are not like they seem. Life is real and life is honest, and the grave is not its goal. But dust thou art, to dust returnest, was unspoken of the soul." I'll stop there and I'll ask Dr. Leverett if there's some other question, or maybe somebody else has some questions they would like to ask me.
Well, so we know that John Lewis had over 40 arrests on his record. Were you able to escape having an arrest record, or did you fall victim of that?
I was able to escape it because I was working in the lunchroom, and I had to be at work at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. I had to be there at 12 o'clock. I had to be there at 6 o'clock to wait on the 40 students that I was responsible for.
Mm-hmm. Recently, my husband and I visited our daughter down in Atlanta, and at the Black or African American Museum there, they have a counter where you can actually, it's a simulation of an actual sit-in, and you put on headphones and you're able to hear all of these people cursing at you, throwing things at you, taunting you, everything. And it's like, can you take it? Will you sit here? Because it's like every second is more intense. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty painful. It only lasts 30 minutes, but I cannot even imagine what it would have been like to sit there for a long time, because you don't know when the hot coffee's coming, or the hot mashed potatoes, or the blow, or whatever. And you think about John Lewis and how, his skull was fractured. So what was it like sitting there at the counter?
It was very nerve-wracking. because we had people that would come by, bumping you on your shoulder, and doing things like that to you, and you couldn't say nothing, you couldn't fight that. So it was very nerve-wracking. And I'll be honest with you, I just didn't know what was going to happen. It was one guy there, the campus policeman attempted to arrest him for harassing the students and everything, and he got in a fight with him,
Wow. All of that while you're trying to study, concentrate and focus on your studies, and you should be a student and a happy student in your spare time, but then the world's just at war all around you. Very difficult time, and we're seeing so much of the same thing pretty much echoed now. We are 40 years 60 years past, that time, yet another, I guess we can say somewhat civil war still pretty much erupting. So tell us something that is not in the book that you would like for the audience to know. Any neat or cute fact, something that you really like that people just may not know about you?
The one thing I like is really education now. There's just so much to learn, and by getting a good education, you have to read a lot. And I see so much on TV. I like to watch CNN, and I like to see in good service. I like to go to good preaching and things like that. But one reason I probably don't have that much in this book, but one reason I wanted to write it, because I wanted to try to inspire so many young people that life is just not that easy, and you should prepare yourself and have that second parachute. The former running back for the Dallas Cowboys, Calvin Hill, his wife, Janet Hill, she told Grant Hill, that was a professional baseball player, Grant, prepare yourself for a second parachute, because that first parachute may not open. And I often think about that. You need to prepare yourself. I was told a long time ago that education is the sum total of your experience. And I can see that. You can go to school and you can major in this and you can be a mathematician or whatever, but sometimes you're still not you're really not that smart, or maybe you don't have the knowledge that you could have gotten. I think that sum total of your education give you a lot of knowledge and something to build on. In other words, getting out, learning how to make up concrete, learning how to do a garden, learning how to do a little landscaping and things like that. All of that make up your real experience, your real education.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Do know that there's a good bit of history in the book. It talks about Waterloo, South Carolina, where Dad was born and raised. And also, there's also information about the Cunningham plantation there, Rosemont. And just a lot of information about growing up in the 40s and in the 50s as a black male, and just how scary that was, especially when lynchings were at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. And so next week for our author series, we're going to have Pamela Ndunye. She has also written about civil issues or social issues, the lack of social justice, in her book, The Hanging Tree Has No Leaves. And that one will air at our regular time on Thursday nights at 7:30. But as we wrap up and leave you, Dad, would you like to give them any closing thoughts, just something to give them hope and encouragement for their weekend and for the remainder of their summer? As I close out, I'd like to say thank you all for joining us and tuning in. If you are interested in the book, it is on Amazon, and you can also find it on HadassahsCrownPublishing.com. It is at a low price of just $9.99. Dad never wanted or intended to make a lot of money. He just wanted the very positive story. He wanted to take the great points from his life and what he's learned throughout his life to just try to help somebody else along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would just like to say that always give honor to God. Give him first. He's first. And then you think about your family. And then you think about your surrounding friends and neighbors and things like that. And if you will give honor to God and keep your hand in his hand, he will take care of you. I'm a living proof of that.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a Hadassah Crown Publishing author, and we just greatly appreciate you. We love you. We thank you for taking time for us today. And again, thank you, viewers. If you have any questions after this interview ends, feel free to inbox me, Sonia C. Leverett. Do enjoy the remainder of your day and the remainder of your weekend as well. Thank you so much.